Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I wanted to speak about an idea which I feel everybody experiences something similar to this in their life. But it's the idea of remembering what you are before you're doing something. Very simple, in whatever context you consider. Right now, I'm speaking. And if I wanted to remember before this, there would be a state where I wasn't speaking. So when a human being exists and is experiencing existence, and that human being wonders before this existence, it was a state where the existence wasn't there. So what I'm telling you is that whether you are a materialist or a materialist, the view of there being something more is not dependent on form, because we're wondering about the before, simply said. An example of it would be that I personally remember a memory in my childhood where I was just like, couple months old. It was just a snapshot. I was on a cradle, in a room, just staring at a part of the room before language, before identity, before personality, before any of these. Therefore, before being a personality, before learning my own name and the subjects that we have chosen for the world as a species, I was just a moment of sight. And so it was remarkable to me how many people are chasing stories, or stories have become treasure maps for the ultimate for people. But really, stories are just mirrors. When you realize there's a self-reflective nature to how meaning arises, as if meaning is a recycling of your own experiences through the other, or through whatever you see. Before language, there was no language. Therefore, to search for something in language before language is impossible. It's like similar to, it's like, imagine that there was a potential, we were a materialistic being, and we became material. And when we became material, there was no other way. It's like you can't explain a material phenomena through immaterial means. If you do, it's just subjectively different, but not experientially different. This idea of the soul, it is like an ancient visitor to the mind of conscious beings. You can poetically say that not all civilizations come to uh, the witnessing of their own movement. Think of it this way, that we are saying, what is let us say, functioning person? A person who's aware of their self, you know. And so we can say when a species becomes aware of itself, it functions beyond an ego. People have been calling me by my name, but no one can be a name. We can have names, but we cannot be the name. You can have a personality, but you are not your personality. And if the person realizes this, they will be freed from the consequences of how their intelligence sets ideology in motion. Really, it's like the world is lifted up into animate intelligence, not by an invisible hand, but by the visible forces of their own. in order to do something, you're required to be something. And you can say, in order to do something, you need to be something, but in order to be something, you don't necessarily need to do anything. That means what? This idea of the soul, I was getting into it, it's derived from the word breath. That means before the idea of the soul, people just like looked at human beings, and as human beings would die, the air in their lungs would leave. Literally, the person would no longer breathe. And that feeling of like a breath, there being a sort of, what do you call it? The breath was the animate force. So when a human being stopped breathing, it was as if the soul left. Now, there was this guy, I remember reading somewhere online. There was this guy who tried to weigh the soul, weigh the body after the soul, potentially leaves the body, right? And I remember this was something I was talking to my father about, you know. And my father brought up the idea that there's this person who is measuring the soul, like the weight of like when a person dies, like the body's different from the weight of the soul. And I remember telling my father, it's probably not like the scientist, not scientist, I shouldn't say, I guess it's not. Well, anyways, this person, this enthusiast in the soul in the outer realms. So this guy measures this body, and it's like weight is different. And he wrote an article like when the soul beats the body, the weight of the body is different, you know. But I would say it's like, so I thought about that, and I'm like, first of all, the soul is not a concept. I don't know how people, you know, it's like it's not something that could be a concept. It's not something that could be in matter. The whole point of the word is that it's something the opposite of matter. It's like people couldn't call it antimatter, so they called it soul. It wasn't nothing, but it wasn't matter, you know. So I thought that it's actually not the weight of the soul this guy was writing about. It was just the oxygen the skin releases. It's like the skin is maintaining the body. It's as if when the prime, as Manly P. Hall, this man I heard on YouTube, he said something interesting where he said behind every biological being, behind every movement in this realm, there is a divine unit. You know, that means imagine there is an assignment. So imagine we make a, in one of my science fiction novels, I touched on this point. That imagine we build the human species in the year 5025 has gotten so enlightened that robots are living like human beings, and human beings are no longer living as just bodies. Pretty much the idea was have human beings have become the angels of the robotic realms. And so we are technically there, but not there to them. So imagine the same way human beings in ancient thought have a relationship with angels, as if the angel is there doing something, but the angel is not visible, right? So I feel that in the future we will become so advanced as a species where we will replicate this, we will employ, we will do this pattern, we will do the same thing, where we will become the angels of the world that we have actually been walked through and walked beyond, you know? Excuse me. Guys, for a second, it just showed 0 viewers. I'm like, oh my god, the void is listening. So, what I'm trying to say is simply the human being has to go somewhere to itself, or it doesn't exist. And really, the idea of the soul is how, in a state of being, there is nothing to move. There's no self to move. So you can say a selfless moment is a moment that is being moved like the wind moving the branches of a tree, leaves of a tree. It's not the tree that is moving it, it's the wind, you know. The wind is moving the leaves of the tree, yet the leaves experiences the movement. And right now, honestly, I feel we are evolving towards the wind. I'll give it a prediction. I think maybe in 233 years, there will be a possibility for human beings to just be born biologically and instantly transition out of the biological body, you know? Because the point is that in the idea in ancient thought, the soul was the world. So pretty much either matter is here first and then the immaterial, or the immaterial is here first and then matter. But the issue with the immaterial being here first, it renders it timeless. So unless there's matter here, technically time doesn't exist for intelligence. So I'm saying that matter changes, space doesn't. Because space doesn't, if our intelligence was active through space and matter, that means we didn't think that there was a body with a soul only. We thought space, empty space, had a soul too. So the soul would technically be the simultaneous witness of matter and space. So technically it would be a point in, I would say, human consciousness, this thing I'm saying 233 years from now. It will be a sort of miniature movement beyond the language threshold. In the subtitle, I've written Control+Zed Metaphysics. This was a very hilarious idea I came up with today. I was thinking about the Control+Z button on the keyboard, and I'm like, how many people, literally, when it comes to their philosophy on life, they think it's like a simulation they're trying to get out of, where they think they've been put somewhere. You know, what if one day you realize all the enemies and friends and all the good and bad and resistant and non-resistant forces of your life were you? What if one day you realize energy was all of it, you were an energetic being, there was some sort of oceanic relationship with everything happening simultaneously? What if you realize that one day? What if right now the human being doesn't realize it, but actually on some subtle level we are experiencing every other human being on this planet? It's as if when you're born in the same species, you get like the same species as Wi-Fi. You know, it's as if our species is given cell phones of understanding. What does that mean? That means just like imagine 8 billion people were given a cell phone where they could communicate to one another. Now imagine 8 billion creatures are given the same species where their eyes are opened in to communicate. Literally, our genetical design is our network, you know. And we have to cherish the human idea. There's one view where the human being is nothing, and we dismiss our own greatness. And then there's a view where the human being has been the most fascinating event of nature so far, and we honor that. We don't blindly glorify it, but we honor the fact that there has been something here doing something. You know, for me, when I realized it's a collective initiative, suddenly the view of success changed. First, success was like, yeah, you know, go find a bunker where you can endure through comfortably. You know, a bunker of, just economical, social, pretty much, it was a sort of, right now the way civilization is designed, it's easier to be selfish than selfless. And an advanced civilization would be the other way. Literally, it makes more sense to be selfless than selfish. It makes, on a personal level, sense to be selfish, You know, you know how many people in countries are selling fish because they have to just live the next day. So a lot of people are selling fish. A lot of people are selfish around this planet. And it's not that we are selfish, I would say. It's not that it's a fixed definition. These are states of mind based on the intent of the being. So it's like a hungry animal will growl, maybe. Or a scared animal. Okay, sorry. A hungry stomach will growl. Let's say, I don't know, intimidated wolf will growl. Or as Milarepa says, one only throws a stick at a lion once. Oh my god, guys, is the sound better? I think the sound should be better now. Okay. I cough right after. For me, it's the species is gambling. The species is gambling in the sense that it's risking. There's a risk to everything. There's a risk to every moment. An economical term would be opportunity cost. That means right now, as I'm speaking, in this moment, I could have been doing anything else, you know. And so when I look at my life and I wonder, okay, what is most important? Of course, I find myself perhaps walking alone in this direction, but for me, I find that what is more important than the body is the mind's life. I feel that we have really lived as bodies for history, as long as we can remember, but we have not actually, we cannot, we have, it's like there has been a disconnection of a state where we lived as minds before bodies. There is in mythology, very interestingly, in Greek mythology and Hindu mythology, there is a war. There is a celestial war. In Greek mythology, it was between the gods and the Titans. I believe in Vedic mythology, it was Asuras and Devas. The Devas and Asuras. And it seemed that it was for the first time the implication of a multidimensional war where the Devas were collective beings, the Asuras were more individually centered. So it was a war between embodied and disembodied being. From a certain viewpoint, you can say. And this war between embodied and disembodied being meant that there was a result. There's a consequence after a war. And you know what the consequence is? Where the attention of the future will go based on the victory. And so what has happened is that you can say there has been poetically a contamination of the dimensions. That's not the best word. There has been a relationship between dimensions. Right now, you can say like two people talking to each other on the planet. That is literally like two universes, two views on the universe speaking to one another, two rooms of universal perception, different universal perception, trying to, in their communication, when two people speak, it becomes like they're trying to create like a third world. So literally, the more people enter a conversation, the more worlds are coagulating, are infusing. So technically rendering a new world. It's kind of like saying somebody has an idea, and then other people add to the idea. Then at the end, we're like, whose idea was that? And we'll be like as many worlds that were involved. For me, I started treating really at some point in my life. It took me a while to catch on to this, but I started treating people as unknown worlds. And therefore, it was like a sort of thing where because one doesn't know where they are, it doesn't matter how much you know. There's still unknown variables in the moment. So that means it is more natural for people to not know than know. That's the way nature is designed. We don't. I'm saying subjectively, of course. That means we're not like a child isn't born like a child that is born isn't born with like a vocabulary. You don't see the child look at the doctor and be like, "Doctor, why you slap me?" You know what I mean? Like the child, children are kind of hit in the back to start breathing when the child is born. So imagine a new infant that's born and the doctor slaps the infant breathes, then the infant's like, "I'm gonna get you one day," and the infant slaps the doctor or something, right? That's hilarious, but imagine. So it would be a point where it would be a transference. It would literally be as if genetics, imagine your genetics held your memories of your ancestors. So imagine if right now it's not the case. Right now there is a genetical continuity of information. So genetical information passes by, but when we wonder about psychological information would be an intense suggestion, because it would be a suggestion that the way your ancestor lived, their personality imprinted on how the genetics accepted itself before continuing. This is how I perceive it. I don't feel scientifically we have gotten to this angle, but we have gotten close to this angle, but not to the way. Because for me, I see a sculptor at work. You see, Michelangelo had this quote where he says, "I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free." So Michelangelo was this Italian sculptor. He saw a chunk of rock, and he looked at that chunk of rock and he saw an angel in it. Literally, he saw the statue of an angel inside a chunk of rock. And then he says, "I set the angel free." And if you think about it, the chunk of rock is a different dimensional intelligence than Michelangelo. And when I look at nature, it's as if something is sculpting intelligence out of potential. It's like there is something causing potential energy to become kinetic. I would say one of the greatest mysteries of why should that even happen? Why should a state of potential ever actualize? Right? So why should Michelangelo sculpt that statue? It's like you can say Michelangelo saw the angel in the stone, but why did he start sculpting it? Why did he make the inner realms? Why did he actualize the inner realms and the outer realms? So I feel it could be on a massive universal scale, an intelligence unfathomable, even maybe a different force. Maybe I think to give this a sort of way to be accessed by scientific circles, we have to call it a sculpting force. Not God, not a story, on a scientific level, a sculpting force. Now that sculpting force could be intelligent or not. That's people's imaginations can go wild there. But I'm saying if we maintain a sculpting voice, it's as if life is something being taken out of something else. This is what I feel really the concept of emergence is, right? So we feel we have brains that emerged. Mr. Within is saying, the brain was sculpted. It didn't emerge. I mean, technically, emergence it did emerge in accordance to the word emergence. But for me, it's a potential that was always there. It just activated rather than this gradual development over time. And we're like, then there was potential. I feel the seed was planted from the beginning. The seed, or you can say another way, the sculptor had decided before the sculpture was made. The sculpture was decided upon before the sculpture was attempted to be made. So I feel, honestly, there is a force that is animating. Now, this force, in secular circles, it is the laws of nature, whatever that is. And from a non-secular viewpoint, it's the will of God, whatever that is. Do you see what I'm saying? Ultimately, it doesn't matter what is the subjective translation of the movement. There is movement. There is arisal and arrival. There is the arising of form, intelligent form. That means I could think of it as if I was born, or I can feel as if I could have always been born. It was as if the potential of existing was there. Maybe not in this exact position of life, but just I feel like the potential was there. Excuse me. So you can say it's like higher dimensions beyond dualism poetically are sculpting the lesser dimensions. What does that mean? That means 3D laws are sculpting 2D laws. And we are here like, whoa, what are the other dimensions? You know, it's just beautiful. This world is, I don't know. I can tell you that I speak different languages. When it comes to languages of the mind, first of all, everybody speaks. I mean, if you're a biological creature, you speak body language, so everybody knows that language instantly. You know, I don't mean body language like how politicians are like shaking hands. You know, that's a bit crazy to me. But like, but like I mean it in the sense where it's the language of your body. That means if you're upset, your face will show. If you lie, your face will show. If you hate, your face will show. And if you love, your face will show. You know, your eyes will really show it. You know? So I would say for the languages of the mind, I speak English, I speak Farsi, and I also speak mathematical language, you can say, numerical language. That means mathematics is a language. If that means if you like, just like German or like I don't know Spanish, you know, you can think of it that mathematics is a way where you can communicate. But it's a mathematics is really cool because you can communicate beyond reality in a way where you stay true to reality. That's the divine in my view. Mathematics is divine. You know, it is like it is the blessing of, you can say poetically, the geometrical gods, you know. So what I'm saying is that there's another language, it's geometry. And it's this view that if everything is geometry, we are moving geometry in static geometry. I can't tell you how much of my inner realms is geometric. How much of my Carl Jungian synchronicities have been geometric. I can tell you I am that person who, you know how there's some people who talk to plants? I'm a person who's talked to geometry. I'm one of those guys, you know, where, you know, geometry is as vital as the breath. It is just the fields of inner law, I would say. Now we can, it's not, when I say speak to geometry, of course, I mean it's like in the middle of just an activity, or it could be speech, or it could be talking to someone. It's like I've perceived them literally translated in my psychology as geometric. So imagine you're like, I'll give you an example. Imagine you're driving in the highway, okay, and you look at the lines on the ground, and there's lines that of course that are drawn before on the road, but now imagine your mind overlays measurements. So imagine just like how an architect would design, or let's say a mechanical engineer would draw on a piece of paper the direction of the forces, the measurements, you know, between different parts of the product's design, let's say, or whatever you're designing, the engine's design. I'm saying that similarly, my mind started to my imagination started to geometrically assist my reality. And so I know I could see every line. It's like we don't realize how many lines our eyes see. You know, we don't realize how many geometry is mind blowing. Architecture, I totally understand why people like they look at a building and they're like, that's beautiful. Now, with geometry, our species is still playing with the idea. That means in secular circles, we have literally hidden geometry under the wing of mathematics. I would say geometry is so supreme that it should have its own branch. Geometry, I am one of those people who I would say geometry should disconnect from mathematics. Either mathematics has to be seen as a branch of geometry, all of mathematics, you know? Because geometry is, I feel it, there is a uniqueness to it. There is something to it that you can't put it in the room with the rest of the kids. It has a different outlook, you know. Imagine like you were a teacher. You know, geometry is a different student than the rest. You know, it's not like the other languages. It is a language of the living imagination. That means for us as human beings, it's not just truth is something to see, to believe. We are objects that, compared to all the other objects, are moving and are animate and are alive. To be alive means you're not an object. But if our language appears as an object, technically we're alive beyond the language. We are life before the form. We are alive before we are a shape, pretty much. We are life before the form. So we are right now life forms. That would be like when we're just pure life. I can tell you, consciousness enters this realm prepared. And to make a point about the geometry, I have had moments I can do this, like it's been a couple years now. I can do it consciously, voluntarily, to some degree, you know. But if the person stops being a person, literally you sit still and silent for a couple hours, or let's say 10 to 20 minutes, without trying to do anything. No meditation, no practice, nothing. You're just sitting. Imagine you went to some enlightened guru and the guru was like, "Yeah, man, you just got to practice sitting. There's no there's no meditation, there's no enlightenment. Just practice sitting." You know? And so imagine sitting and watching yourself sitting. That's pretty much it. Now, it's like the person, after sitting for a while, like the ripples of a pond, their ideological grasp of the world loosens, and they will go to a null point, to a neutrality. Just a neutrality of nature, just like a bird staring that has no plan, no past or future yet. It's just watching, you know? So from the neutrality and non-ideological, I can't even say state, but non-ideological attention, that attention, if you don't move, if it is necessary for you, can move as geometry. So think of the attention as your hand. Your attention is holding your body because you're moving as your body. But if your attention managed to somehow, through a deep trust of your own nature, let go of being the body, technically your attention is free, your hands are free. Now that free attention has the potential to move as geometry. So what it technically means is that, imagine the brain copy pasting the world for itself, to itself, copying and pasting. That means it exists. That means the brain creates a version of the world. Now that version of the world is malleable for the brain. The brain can instantly resculpt it, the mind, really. So because the mind can instantly resculpt the copy-paste version of the outer realms, the mind can instantly make the whole thing geometric. Literally, like someone who's a translator, UN translator, you can translate the English language to like French. Do you know what I mean? So it's literally a copy paste of the outer realm's meaning, and then an emotionally sculpted instant navigation as geometry. So it's another way of saying you can geometrically move into subtle reality. You can move geometrically in subtle reality simulations. It's literally visualization, but you're not forcing it. Because you're not forcing visualization, your presence activates your vision. Your presence starts living, not your personality. So your presence is non-local. As like, imagine we were literally reverse engineering back into your attention, and we realized we got to a point where attention and energy were like chicken and the egg. They were simultaneous. They were simultaneous. Technically, okay, here. Another way, what I'm saying is we're experiencing world, we're living a life before we actually move our body. Okay, we're living a life, inner life, before we actually decide in our outer life. And literally, it's the inner self deciding what the outer self wants to wear, what to do, and all of this. Okay, we can't ignore this. If it doesn't matter if you're secular, non-secular, I don't care, but you cannot ignore that as we are existing subjectively to ourselves. If we ignore this, literally, it's a permission slip for the philosophers to become like Che Guevara. That's when philosophers should become rebels. Because philosophy is the backup system to a world that is getting blinded by belief and disbelief. And people don't know this, but science was a branch of philosophy. Now scientists want to make philosophy a branch of science, I would say. That they are treating it that way, but it's wrong. Because the unknown was here before the known, and you give the known too much permission, you have enslaved yourself to the shapes in a changing world. That is, I would say, a belief and a disbelief are both ideological possession. Because if the person directly experienced, there would be no need to believe or disbelieve. If you knew, you knew. You know? And it is a fascinating question to wonder that behind these named eyes, before these named eyes were performing in this elemental theater, the elemental cosmic theater, what could you be? Impossible to conceive. So I am telling you, it's not, I'm not just saying this as a philosopher. All ideological systems return to the unknown. All. Because they are born in the unknown. That means no ideological system is ever known. We have never known anything. We have just traveled through a changing world. And all of it is to the human being significant. That means imagine aliens land on Earth and we're like, hey, do you guys speak English? And the alien just makes some weird alien noise and we're like, okay, show the aliens films. They don't speak English, you know? They're not. The most important thing for the advanced communicator, wherever the eyes of the advanced communicator open, it is honesty with the world you're in. That means it's okay. Like people can't, you can say inner realms are so different that when two people speak, it's never the same. They're never talking about the same thing. No one is ever talking about the same thing. They're talking about how much, it's, how can I tell you? It's like two people can look at an artwork, and yes, two people looked at the Mona Lisa, but they did not see the same Mona. One of them saw, like, looked at the painting and saw the actual picture, and it's like, who's that girl? And suddenly you read the history, you realize it was the wife of some duke. But then you suddenly imagine you know who Da Vinci was to some degree, like you read his bio online. And you realize that Da Vinci's style of art and painting was self-portrait. So it's like you're looking at Da Vinci drawing the Duke of a wife through his own image. So someone would look at it and actually see not the Mona Lisa, see how Da Vinci used self-portrait techniques. So one person would look at the Mona Lisa, see Da Vinci's brush move. One looks at the Mona Lisa and wonders who's what, who is that lady, you know? You see? It's like two people saw the same. Two people are in the same world, but they don't see the same thing of the world. They don't extract the same meaning. So technically, we have either all been liars, or truth was never. We were in a multidimensional reality. If we declare singular, the more singular specific your expectation, the more harsher your judgment. That means if we want to make a utopian, we're like, yeah, everybody has to be soft and happy all the time. It's like, excuse me? Look at how many ways this world moves. It's like telling a lion it can only move in a certain angle. The lion will just roar at your face, you know? I think this is a valid statement to say a lion roared a person's face off, like I honestly feel if a lion roars beside a person and that person has no idea there's a lion there, that person can have an out of body experience. It's like the person wants to get out of there quicker than they can actually get out of there, so their attention could potentially leave its local construct. So technically, because we have inner realms, we can never see the same outer realm. But because we're in the same outer realm, we can build. We can build together. We can't see together. So you can say life is experienced alone, but you exist together. That is the best position, really. The most immediate thing, there was, I think in one episode I brushed upon this idea, but do you know how an advanced civilization would be? Let a poet use a can opener to spill the beans. An advanced civilization, unlike the Orwellian sense of conduct of like control, the advanced civilization is is a brother to the citizen. And let me tell you why a brother. Or you can say a sister, but why I'm using the sibling metaphor. In 1984, written by George Orwell, we are introduced to a government that is, in some sense, using fear to control people. Very simple. You can say a government is here to assist the human being. Pretty much that's why we created governments, to assist the identity of the human being. Now, we have seen in history an example of a big brother, but I would say an advanced civilization is an older brother. It is not the big brother. It's not big brother is watching you like a insecure god. Dictators are acting like insecure gods, really. Imagine finding a contentment that gives you true power. Not an artificial power taken because that was the cheat codes of the game to play in that moment. I'll tell you, those who chase power, you're missing out on 70% of the glory of life, You're just gonna feel 30. It's like you came to see a film, but you're gonna only see like a little bit of the film if you try to chase power. All those people. And when I say power is transformation. You're trying to control destiny. And even though we have this thing, free will, yeah, the person chooses their destiny, sure. But when I say power, you're trying to control the destiny of your world. You can say a person needs a power. Everybody has to be a dictator of their biological body. Everybody has to dictate. Literally, you have to command your existence to movement. There's moments where I'm tired in the morning and I just command myself. I shout at myself. Not like loud, in my inner realms. That means it's like I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I haven't slept for 2 days, and then I'm like, a thought arises and I'm like, okay, get up. And I created a thing where I just say, just poetically to myself, I say, pilot going in, and then I just start the talk, I just say it to the universe and I just give the talk, so but what I was trying to get to was that pretty much in this life, it's important to get to know yourself as an object and to wonder and learn and update your methods of mobility as an object. And then we require to update our methods of mobility as a subject. That's what I'm doing right now with these talks. That's what I've decided. That's what I've decided the greatest activity of the mind is, to discover the new. And the only way you can discover the new is to shake the past if you are not allowed to see something else. That means it's like, imagine you're someone and you got an experience that you felt was of a metaphysical nature, but you were also someone who loved science as a kid. It was as if like technology was an incredible fascination of yours, and now you want to stay true to the scientific context of the journey of the species, but at the same time you have experienced something that cannot be contained in that outlet. So what is literally left? We have to literally, instead of believing or disbelieving, we have to shake up what we know. That means, think of it right now, whoever you are listening, how many ways can you literally behave that you don't know yourself right now? How many potential versions of you exist in the void that you haven't even fathomed? Let's say it's like nobody has ever pointed it out. You will be shocked and you will realize how multidimensional we are. We are a multidimensional being in a multidimensional universe. And we're playing language games that make us worship singular dimensions of subjective outline. And that's dangerous. Why? Because tell me how dangerous is a box on the head of a person walking towards a cliff. Anytime the real life force is not active, most likely the person is being used, either by their outer realms or inner realms. If you don't feel like you're living your life, then you must immediately ask, what is living my life? And that question can come from two different types of the idea of possession. I'm not speaking per se in a religious context. I'm saying possession is occupation of attention. So you can be possessed by your environment. That means, imagine Einstein wanted to write an essay on general relativity in the patent office, and his friends like, Einstein, don't waste your time writing, man. Life is short. Let's go get drunk, and and Einstein's like, but I feel I need to do this, man, and imagine Einstein's buddy's like, don't be weak, Einstein, YOLO, you only live once, who cares about time and space being connected and potentially revolutionizing our technological ability. And I'm glad Einstein stayed true to his weirdness, to his strangeness, because that's what will happen to anyone who explores. You have to be weird to your own past. Why? Because it's not weird, it's different. Everything is weird. Imagine being a child and opening your eyes in this world. What is more weirder than being inside a world? We normalize. And that normalization process is a subjective agreement. So we are sculpting our knowledge in accordance to how our attention is positioned. And why isn't music playing? The chat section, I feel the chat section is enlightened, guys. There's no comments except a thumbs up. So, really, study your attention. A being like you has never existed. You're an invention of nature. At least figure out what you can do with this invention, and life will always have possibilities. The logos one night, poetically through a pen held by my fingers. I'll say it like this: once the logos through a pen, the logos wrote to me. Let me say it like that: that every moment has a genius design in it. Every moment. That means it doesn't matter what situation you're in life. It doesn't matter if you are in the worst situation or the best situation. Every moment has a better way it can happen. Always. And I'll give you an example. Imagine you start playing tennis, okay? And you are hitting the racket and you get tired. And then you go on YouTube, you type in tennis compilation, and you see these great tennis players, and you realize these techniques these great tennis players have been using that in some sense you didn't know that you could have done the whole time. And that's what I mean, that there's a genius design. Every moment has an incredible potential of happening in an efficient way. What does that mean? That means if we don't choose to, what's the term, compulsively respond or impulsively respond or react, we will get to be able to entertain different subjective angles to the objective event before actually doing anything to the objective event. The species seems like it has given up on what it deep down knows it deserves. So many people may do something in life that is wrong, and they may feel they don't deserve to live. They don't deserve to live normally or whatever. It is the case that the more chaotic the activity, the more you're scarring your own mind. You are scarring you're scar literally you are be compassionate to all dimensions of life, whether inner or outer, whether it's the thought of your own suffering or your own joy. When people realize the person is born to also get to know themselves, not just others. It's your, you can say, existential birthright to experientially wonder about how existence is. And something I noticed, that anybody who tells you not to ask the question why doesn't want you to change how everything's being seen. Those people afraid of the why questions are afraid of their imagination. Yet it is a gift. It is a gift to see, sight, or to realize, as the Upanishads would say, the seer of the unseen is the seer of the seen is unseen. That means how the awareness to how you're aware right now to yourself is unspeakable. At best, we can say unknown witness. There's an invisible viewer in the visible body. And the invisible viewer right now, our relationship with it is like, yo, let's name it. Let's give it a personality, Let's, And so Control+Zed metaphysics could mean nothing. Literally. And so much of life is what story people are telling themselves. When I was younger, before 2011, I wasn't even conscious of that I was telling myself a story. Like, I wasn't even conscious I was a character in a story. I was living well, I was living normally, but to myself, it's like I hadn't realized life was a story. When I realized, imagine a person who's been exposed to, well, not exposed, but like you were at an early age introduced to these three things, imagine at the same time, do you know? Scientific ideas, religious ideas, and spiritual ideas. And for the longest time, ever since 2000, when I began these talks, I went on this exploration where I'm like, what am I missing here? It's like I see these three lenses. I have looked at these three lenses so many times, and I'm like, what is missing here? What have I not yet noticed? Is it a transcendental experience? Is it something? And you know what it was? It was right in front of my eyes. Language is holding all of it. Experience to the individual is a linguistic simulation. So when I realized there is something observing beyond language, to the subjective self, your mind was here before your body. But in the outer realms, your body was here before the mind. That means to the I thought, mind is here first, then body. To the person you see in the mirror, body here first, then mind. And do you know how many people have fought over this? Just this simple point. Pretty much, I will tell you, anybody, like, this is the scholarly vision. We know some things as a species, and the rest of it is unknown, and there's even the unobservable universe. That is the world we're living in, not in a world where people know things. People are certain of things. Everybody has just climbed the mountain a certain amount, That means it's too early to act like gods, but it's way past the point to still act like an object. Like, you should have a subjective responsibility, in this world. If you at this point, like, if you were an animal in a forest, sure, you had no choice, do whatever you want, you couldn't be conscious of the environment. But now you can be conscious of the environment. So to act like an animal in 2020, the fact that there is still violence blows my mind. It just blows my mind. It's like have we not noticed how wondrous this mind is here, this force of articulation, the articulator. Activate your mind's life and then wonder about the beyond. And the easiest way to, I would say, activate your true mind's life dash intelligence is by returning to a point in your psyche or remembering a time in your life where you trusted the world, simply. Those who find a simple trust in nature will sail the harshest storms of karma smoothly. When the soul remembers before the eyes, it's as if we Control+Z language back into nothing. Back into no thing. So literally, we have connected symbols, subjects to objects right now, and hopefully, if I'm doing my if I'm piloting properly, people will notice the difference between how a subject and an object are not each other. That means if somebody comes and says to you, "Who are you?" and you're like, "I'm a happy guy," you know, it's like it's like that answer is just the moment's face. Yet the moment is facelessly viewing things. It's remarkable. The mind cannot die. It's as if the mind is eternal creation and the body is eternal destruction. Oh, sorry, excuse me. The mind is eternal creation. The body is temporal destruction. The body is here to just. It's sometimes I poetically feel that the cells and the atoms of my body are like crew members. They are assisting my mind's work. Do you know? It's like my cells are like they are commanding officers of my existence. Trust me, I have, as a person, I have apologized to my existence, even. You know, I think every person has moments where psychology, if it's mismanaged, has to be released instantly. You know, it's like a cup of tea has slipped over a table and the water is about to drip over, let's say, the floor, and you have like seconds to just get some sort of towel or napkin to not let the water fall on the ground, you know. Just like a ninja, throw tissues to stop the playfulness is understanding nature's law, to realize that the simple is okay. That means if you lived very simply on this planet, it is okay. If you lived very complex in a very complex way, it is okay. And I will tell you, like, I experienced, I would say, an inner realm, uh, like I experienced a moment where in this life where I felt my attention was leaving. I literally felt like it was my last moment on earth. But it was it was moment. It wasn't anything like intense and dangerous. It was just a moment where I felt literally, I'm exiting. I felt like my attention was exiting this plane. I was piloting. It's like, imagine a pilot in an airplane, and it was a moment where I suddenly felt I'm about to press the eject button. You know, that means the plane goes on without the participation of that pilot anymore. Other pilots come. You know, there's always nature hires the best in the galaxy. You know, Gaia hires the best in the galaxy. You know, it's of course, I'm being playful. What I'm trying to say is that imagine somebody put a giant gift in front of you, and imagine your whole life you stared at it. That's what that kind of near inner death experience felt like. It felt like a wind came and pushed away all of my talks. You see, like it was so remarkable, because in that moment, it was an experience. This experience I'm telling you, it happened a year ago to me. You know, where it was literally, I'll repeat it again. It was a wind. I was standing and I felt a wind hit me, and this wind took all my desires. It took, I wouldn't say it took all my desires, it took away everything that my ego held. It was literally as if, like, when the final moment comes, I feel literally the ego is like told to leave the room, you know? And that I thought where you're entertaining is told to leave the room, and you're left with your rawest emotions. That means who you feel to yourself deep down is what remains in this world, beyond its shape. For me personally, I mean, I wouldn't say I, like, when it comes to emotional language, I wouldn't say I'm the best. I'm a slow emotional reader. You know, sometimes I'm too caught in the design and geometry of the situation to pay attention to the emotions. You know, but the way I've established a relationship with my own emotions is that they're like a language specialist finding hieroglyphs for the first time. You know, a language expert wanting to, like, seeing like as language that has never existed before. My emotions are like visitations of an experience never had before. It's literally like I think a visitation of a collective realization or something. You know, an emotion. It's something you notice about the collective that it instantly the emotion is there. And it's not necessarily something to link to the idea of the collective, but I could tell you emotions are like, imagine, I don't know, imagine it's like a extraterrestrial visitation would be the similar feeling. It's like an unknown visitor, but it's not shape, it's not form, it's just an unknown moment, you know, where its intensity is way more on the physical body. Like, literally, it's a different instruction manual for the genetics. It's like a wave makes the gene behave differently. We have this view that the gene is self-replicating, but I feel the gene is a disciple of light. And literally, the gene is not self-replicating. The gene is being, by light, instructed to self-replicate. And because the command has been genetically passed on, the cell has by light been sculpted to self-replicate, to give. When we act like the sun, your karma is beautiful. When you give, just in some sense, you realize in a temporary world, you don't have time to fill up your hands. It's like filling up the pockets of pants that you're not going to be wearing. It's like putting your car keys, your whole life, you're putting your car keys, your wallet, you know, your phone in your pockets, you know? And it's like, imagine then you take off the pants and wear shorts and just go outside, you know? You don't wear pants at all. So it's like that hilarious thing where the person is preparing for an ideological position, but it's going to be pushed into an unknown experiential one. So if you don't have contentment with the unknown, you're going to freak out. And if you freak out, you're gonna believe trust me, you can be even, atheists would not like to hear this, but there's beliefs even in that, you can say, in a metaphysical context. The mind is like brainwashed to endlessly be a brain. Oh man, okay. It's not that intense, but I would say what I'm saying is that unless you find a better way of doing something, you're still doing it in the same way. So insight is the path beyond sight. And if our sight is a simulation, if whoever you are listening, if you're treating this life like a dream, like a simulation, for how many eons do you want to keep awakening? Isn't it boring to endlessly, you know, be an individual and, oh my god, another enlightenment game. I asked this when I was in India. There was this, I stayed in an ashram in Rishikesh for 2 months, Niketan ashram. And I lived a very simple life. The diet was vegetarian. I wasn't smoking at all. You know, it was a very very, very simple. It was as if, like, I felt I was turning into kale. Like, I was starting to feel like kale, that the vegetable. Like that Vogue, you know. Like the body felt just healthier. I'm telling you, when you eat vegetarian, like something, the body is like more relaxed, you know. But when you eat meat, the body's like at war. So I think athletes, like those people who have a lot of physical movement, they should eat meat. Those people who don't have a lot of physical movement, they should eat plants, really. Or you can eat both of them, It's like questioning the question, coming to the questioner, and then questioning the questioner as another questioner, and realizing there is no questioner. So if we reverse engineer, pretty much there is no such thing as a belief even. We're just attention that is moving in a spectrum, in a landscape. We have mind boxed ourselves from an incredibly multidimensional and mysterious life. And metaphors come and go like birds, in accordance to their own will. In that inner transition experience I had, the only feeling that was left was what I knew all along I was avoiding. I would say that is the sort of, there was a emotional regret of having not used what was always there. And can you believe there are people who are depressed? That means some people are like, wow, what an opportunity. I'm existing rather than not existing. And some people are like, oh man, I don't like existing. Like it is just shocking. And complexity arises from simplicity. That means any person who has ever said, I don't understand, that it's like something is too complex to understand, they have been too lazy to review the simple again. That's it. Nothing is difficult if you see how it becomes difficult, like how it happens. It's like when you watch the film, rather than turning it on from the middle, like if somebody shows you the middle of a film, you'll be like, I have no clue what's going on. I don't understand this film. But if you see the film from the beginning and notice the character development, that way you would instantly understand that scene you saw, you know? So it's the same way with what we're calling, or what we're masking as intelligence, as the word intelligence. It is freedom of the simple, with complexity being a potential that can just be activated or not. I could choose to speak now, or I could choose not to. I can even, like, I'll tell you something. I could technically speak without words. Literally, that's what thought is. And we don't notice it, but everybody should slow hand clap for their voice box. It's every time you linguistically think of a thought, your voice box is in a subtle way moves. So that means, imagine, like, I'll give you an example. I'm gonna say, I saw an apple. That sentence. Now listen to my voice. I saw an apple. I saw an apple. I saw an apple. And then it reaches a point where there is no volume, yet the vocal cords are still saying, I saw an apple. So that is why I'm saying sometimes thought is the overactivation of the voice box. It can be also, like, related to that somehow. I'm telling you, it's like, the certain neural movement is becoming simultaneous with the voice box. The voice box of the person is the most precision part of the body. It is just, like for me, it's more fascinating than the pineal gland. And I found it so hilarious. There's something called the New Age community, but all of them, all the people there feel timeless. So it's hilarious. It's like it's called the New Age, but time doesn't exist. you know, Spirituality is, I'm telling you, for now, words have their allegiance more to the material than the immaterial. And it's kind of funny, it's like the subject is limited to its expression based on the object. That means you could, in your mind, literally have Superman's psychology, but this body is this body. You know what I mean? That means if you look at Superman, and you were Rene Descartes who perceived mind-body dualism, you could totally see Superman's mind being in a different dimension than his body. So technically, to be Superman means to be just that mind. You know? Can you imagine, like, Superman saves a yogi, and this yogi puts down Superman, like, let's say, saves the yogi from a falling cliff, and the yogi, the mystic, is there, let's say, the yogi, let's say. And Superman looks at the yogi and he says, "Aren't you going to say thank you? I just saved your life." And the yogi says, "Who saved your life? Who saved my life?" And Superman says, "I did, man. Superman saved your life. Are you blind?" And then the yogi's like, "Who is Superman?" And Superman's like, "Whoa." And then Superman, like Clark Kent with all his insecurities, begins to wonder, what is Superman? What is this? And he says it's like the Freudian, let's say that he gives a Freudian analysis, and then the yogi keeps just saying, who is the one doing this? Who is the one asking this? Who is the one, what? Like, and this guy, eventually, Superman's like, whoa. This yogi is making me realize that the mind is super. The body is a man. So technically, if you have the same ideals as Superman, you're technically a Superman. If you have the same ideals as a Star Wars Jedi, technically, on a mind level, mind and body, different dimensions, you are a Jedi. Do you know? I'm just saying, like, just if the mind and body were separate. Right now, we don't see it that way. Pretty much, I will tell you, modern secular thought is on brain lockdown. It's all locked down in the brain, because we are saying the brain emerged, then we are who we are. Right? So we are building cultures only for the brain, for a brain. It's like brain cultures right now. It's not mind cultures yet. And I feel people like Terence McKenna, for me, it was like a movement in history where Terence McKenna was really, people don't know this, but to me, Terence McKenna was so ahead of his time. He pioneered cyberpunk psychology in a healthy way. He did the impossible. When I say cyberpunk, that means the transition of, like, Terence McKenna was this person, he was an ethnobotanist. He saw the whole way. He went and saw the metaphysical relationship of people with plants back in the day. He saw the metaphysical relationship of people with now in regards to modern science, and he saw the metaphysical relationship of people in the future in cyberspace. Cyberspace could be like, if it would literally, science would be on the scientific method is the pioneer of technology. So if you were a robot in the future and you wanted to know who your ancestor is, you would realize your ancestor was the scientific method.
let's say 5,000 years from now, like a robot's like, who was my founding ancestor? Find, So robots are the grandchildren of the scientific method. I think Richard Feynman would be like, all right, I like that sentence. Richard Feynman would be like, that's fine, man. I would say anybody interested in science should know Richard Feynman, Isaac Asimov. These two people are very important to not be forgotten, because culture is just points of reference, and we have to build the new. We are pretty much building or planting like seeds based on our actions in 2020, the gardens of 2220, for example. The gardens of the future are being planted now. The seeds are being planted now. Every person's technically just its cause and effect. Your free will is just. Here's the thing: you can implement your free will, in a sense where you're doing something that's been done before, or you're doing something new. To do something new means you can't expect the same comfort as the past self. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to be a mountain climber out of nowhere, or let's say, I don't know, let's say you want to be a skydiver, right? And you've never skydived. So you can't expect emotionally the same before or you actually skydive. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, let me rephrase that. Like right now, I'm a person who I haven't skydived in my life. At least in the outer realms, I haven't skydived. But I've seen people skydive online, and I've seen their face, and I've seen their eyes and the intensity. It's like a pressure. It's like a pressure on the psyche for being in a position it has never been before, right? It's an intensity. It's like even a motorcyclist doing a backflip with a motorcycle and jumping on the other and landing on the other hill. Like that too is again in such an intense moment. And so that intensity, no way it can satisfy the self you are now. So that means before you skydive, you can't have expectations. So pretty much nobody knows ever how good or bad they are at anything until they do it. You never know. You could just, it could be endless imagination, but endless probabilities, but you never know until you do something. Just like, imagine you go to a store and you see somebody who goes to the store, pulls the door doesn't open, and the guy comes up to you and says, hey man, the store is closed, and the guy leaves. And you're just there staring at the store and being like, this guy didn't try pushing it, and you push the door and the door opens and you go in. It's kind of like that. That push is trust. You trust this world, it will communicate to you. I wouldn't say what I'm doing in these talks it's just me. I would say it's how me has understood the world so far. So technically me is limited to the world. And the world is limited to how this self looks at it. Free yourself from ideology by realizing you have always been the observer, the attributeless observer of every attribute that has come and gone. Your eyes have an unknown cameraman. Your brain is like a camera, and there's an unknown cameraman disguised as a subject to itself. This unknown cameraman, I'm saying personally, like in these Mr.Within talks, that it's beyond the language threshold, the term I coined. That means you can't put words to it. It's beyond it. Words bow to experience, believe it or not. That means when somebody speaks from experience, philosophers have no choice but to have to deal with the imagery of the experience, you know. It's like somebody who's eaten food before and somebody who's never eaten food, you know, like consciously. They've never had picked up a spoon to eat food consciously. It's like one knows what it's like, the other doesn't. The skydiver knows what skydiving is like, but the person who hasn't skydived and is like, oh my god, what do I believe about skydiving? You know, I gotta have a positive mindset on skydiving. Do you know, okay, I'm just gonna go in the mirror and tell myself, I'm a great skydiver, great skydiver, great skydiver. And then the moment happens when you go skydiving and you freak out because you have for the whole time lied. Because anything new you try, you're a fool in it first. I'm telling you, it's like once you get over the fool's karma of whatever craft or art form you do, then the master's karma is experienced. Then beyond the master's karma is peace. You come at peace with your craft, with your art form, with how you wield your attention as an energetic existential phenomenon. So when you come at peace with that, you technically, it's like you've played with something for so long, it's like you've played a video game for so long where you don't need to play it, but you know you're great at it if you were to play it, for example, you know? And how remarkable is this, that beauty is a subject, and yet people are so focused on appearance. That means I remember in one talk I was in downtown Toronto, and for a second I'm like, it's like it's literally our species is playing costume games. We are literally at that phase where, like right now, I even see it in the future that people's clothing is going to reflect their thoughts. So when you get angry, imagine the future, like, I don't know, a couple thousand years in the future, your clothing changes color or changes shape. When you get angry, like your clothing is relevant to the type of thought you have, imagine, you know? How cool would that be, you know? You get angry, literally you have like red samurai armor just appear out of nowhere on your body, you know? Imagine you suddenly feel like gentle and calm like a wind, and I don't know, you have like, I don't know, some sort of silk. We have to tolerate our way into an advanced civilization, literally. We gotta like literally like every day wake up and the world's not gonna be perfect, and we're like, we forgive you, world, just grow up, please. You know? It's like just advance and, you know. It's like, it's like, imagine there's this story, a person finds a divine audience with the truth. Imagine from a theological context, a person finds an audience with God. And the person's like, or let's say a person, let's create a story. Let's say there was a person and he went to heaven. And in heaven, he saw God and he was like, God, what was the whole soul thing about? Like, I understand like the life and thing and the judgment and all thing, but what was the whole soul idea? Do you know why did you create like an experiential dimension to just the realm, right? Like a inconceivable experiential dimension to the realm, like why was there a glitch in the system of the yin yang of the material and the immaterial? And imagine the voice of God in heaven looks at the person and says, sometimes art doesn't have an explanation. It just is. That means that's the beautiful thing of freedom of speech. You can say, you can speak as a being while you're alive, you know? And freedom of speech, there's even though silence is an important thing to make you realize your mind. But I'm telling you, so many people, I was a very shy person, you know? Like if people went and asked like people around me who I was growing up, I was very internal. Like I would say, I wasn't even in my poetically. I wasn't in my body even in my childhood. You know, I existed, but it wasn't the experience of a body. It was more like the body. The experience of a body is a drop on a leaf. Imagine, and I was experiencing a river of being. So technically, everybody's living a non-ideological life. We have no way of talking about it, though, explaining its imagery, aside from whatever metaphor we can use, And when you realize your eyes were open, whether you close them or not, life is not a game anymore. It's not a game. That's when purpose and true service comes. Like, what if there is a purpose to life, but it doesn't activate until the antenna is at the right signal? What if literally it's like we're living on a Rubik's Cube, we just haven't moved it in the right algorithm? Imagine like this talk gets popular and Rubik's Cube sales go off the chain. The ability of the mind is that you can always Control+Z to that unknown viewer. Anything. You could be in any moment and people can come and say anything, or you could have any sort of belief and you can Control+Z back to the neutrality that you once began the whole story of the world from. That is a sort of freedom of speech in the inner realms. You become free. You realize in a long history of silence, vocal cords have appeared. Do you know how beautiful that is? In a silent cosmos, there being a voice. We are the voice of nature right now because we're natural beings. So it's like somebody's like, how do I listen to nature? And you're like, yeah, you've been listening to nature every time you've talked to someone. It's like, how do I speak the hidden language of nature? It's like you're being it. You're being the secret of the universe. That's why it has to be a secret for the doer. It will appear as a secret to the doer. The personality is like a tip of the iceberg. It's nothing, technically. That means if you think people are their psyche, even their communication, that's a flaw too. We are never language, we're not thought. Because we can Control+Z. Like a keyboard, Control+Z our way out of our ignorant karma. Imagine you opened up like these elder scrolls that had dust on them and were found in this like forgotten temple, and you opened the thing and it was like it was literally like keyboard command tasks. It was like you're like, oh my god, Control+Z, Control+A, Control+V. You're like, holy shit, this scroll from like thousands of years ago, they knew we were gonna Control+Z. Anyways, guys, the privilege of life is to really get to see who you are before you're not. Thanks for listening. Blessings.